Ever heard of a king who stood in the way of an entire nation's destiny? A king whose defeat became a legendary tale, told for generations. Today, we're diving deep into the story of one of the Bible's most formidable, yet often overlooked, monarchs, Sihon, king of the Amorites. His clash with Moses and the Israelites wasn't just a minor skirmish. It was a pivotal moment that shaped the course of history for the people of Israel as they journeyed to the Promised Land. So, who was this powerful king? Why did he refuse passage to a massive host of people? And what lessons can we draw from his rise and dramatic fall? Stick around as we uncover the story of King Sihon, a tale of pride, power, and divine purpose. To understand King Sihon, we first need to understand his people, the Amorites. The Amorites weren't just some small, local tribe. They were a powerful and influential Semitic people who dominated much of the ancient Near East for centuries. Originating from the Syro-Arabian desert, they established mighty kingdoms, including the famous First Babylonian Empire under Hum. By the time of the Israelite Exodus, the Amorites were well established in the land of Canaan and the surrounding regions. They were known for their military strength and their fortified cities. Sihon ruled over a significant portion of this territory, with his capital at Heshbon. The Bible introduces us to Sihon in the book of Numbers, chapter 21. After decades of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites are finally on the eastern border of the Promised Land. Their path takes them directly to the territory of King Sihon. Moses, acting as a diplomat before a warrior, sends messengers to Sihon with a very reasonable request. He says, "Let us pass through your country. We will not turn aside into any field or vineyard, or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." This was a standard diplomatic protocol. The king's highway was a major ancient trade route, and Moses was promising a peaceful, orderly passage. They wouldn't touch their resources or cause any trouble. It was a fair offer, but Sihon's response was a flat-out no. He didn't just refuse. The Bible says he gathered his entire army and marched out to meet Israel in the desert. Why such an aggressive reaction? The text doesn't explicitly state his motives, but we can infer a few things. First, there was fear. A group of 2 million people, even if they promised to be peaceful, would be an intimidating sight. Allowing them to pass through could be seen as a sign of weakness or a huge security risk. Second, there was pride. Sihon was a conqueror. The text mentions that he had previously fought against the king of Moab and taken all his land, including the city of Heshbon, which he made his own capital. He was a powerful ruler who had expanded his kingdom through military might. He likely saw the Israelites as another potential threat to be crushed, not a people to negotiate with. He trusted in his own strength and his army's proven track record. He probably thought, "Who are these desert wanderers to make demands of me?" So, Sihon chose conflict over diplomacy. He marshaled his forces and confronted the Israelites at a place called Jahaz. What happened next became a cornerstone of Israelite history. Despite the Amorites' reputation as fierce warriors, the battle was a decisive victory for Israel. The Bible states it plainly. Israel, however, put him to the sword and took over his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok. They didn't just defeat his army. They utterly conquered his entire kingdom. They captured all the Amorite cities, including the heavily fortified capital of Heshbon, and settled in them. King Sihon, the great conqueror, was himself conquered and killed. The defeat of Sihon wasn't just a military victory. It was seen as a profound sign of God's favor and power. This wasn't just Moses' army against Sihon's army. It was a demonstration that God was fighting for his people. Later, in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses recounts this story and reveals a deeper theological layer. He tells the people that God had hardened Sihon's spirit and made his heart obstinate so that he could deliver him into their hands. This is a common theme in the Bible. It suggests that Sihon's pride and refusal were part of a larger divine plan. God used Sihon's own arrogance to bring about his downfall and to give the Israelites their first taste of victory and their first piece of land on the edge of the Promised Land. The victory over Sihon had immediate and long-lasting consequences. Firstly, it provided the Israelites with a crucial strategic foothold. The land they conquered from Sihon, a fertile and well-watered region east of the Jordan River, became the inheritance for the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. This was their first permanent settlement after 40 years of wandering. Secondly, the victory was a massive morale boost. After decades in the desert, facing a powerful king and winning so decisively proved that God's promises were real. It gave them the confidence they needed for the even greater challenges that lay ahead in conquering Canaan proper. But the impact of this story echoes far beyond the initial conquest. The defeat of Sihon, king of Heshbon, and his neighbor Og, king of Bashan, became a legendary tale. It was told and retold throughout the generations as a primary example of God's power to deliver his people. When Rahab the prostitute in Jericho speaks to the Israelite spies, what does she mention? She says, "We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed." The news of this victory had spread, striking fear into the hearts of Israel's enemies. This refrain, Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, appears again and again in the Bible. It's in the Psalms, like Psalm 135 and 136, which are songs of praise recounting God's mighty deeds. It's mentioned by leaders like Joshua and Jephthah as they rally the people, reminding them of God's past faithfulness as a reason to trust him in the present. The story served as a historical anchor, a constant reminder that no earthly power, no matter how strong or proud, could stand against God's purpose for his people. It became part of Israel's national identity. So, what can we take away from the story of King Sihon today? On one hand, it's a cautionary tale about pride. Sihon was a successful, powerful king who trusted in his own military strength. His arrogance blinded him to the possibility of a peaceful solution and led directly to his destruction. He underestimated his opponent because he failed to recognize the divine power backing them. It's a timeless lesson. Pride comes before the fall. When we rely solely on our own strength, our own intellect, or our own resources, we set ourselves up for failure. We become rigid and unwilling to consider other paths, just as Sihon refused the king's highway. On the other hand, for the Israelites, it's a story of faith and deliverance. They were facing a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. A fortified kingdom led by a battle-hardened king stood directly in their path. But by trusting in God and obeying his commands, they achieved a victory that was humanly impossible. It's a powerful reminder that when we are aligned with the divine purpose, we are not alone in our battles. The challenges that seem like giant walls in our path can become gateways to our own promised lands. King Sihon of Heshbon is more than just a footnote in biblical history. He is a pivotal character whose prideful decisions set the stage for one of Israel's most defining moments. His defeat was the first domino to fall in the conquest of the Promised Land. A story of victory so profound that it was sung in psalms and recounted for centuries. It's a powerful narrative about the clash between human arrogance and divine will, and a testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest obstacles are placed in our path, only to be overcome, revealing a strength we never knew we had. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the story of King Sihon. If you found this interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the fascinating figures of history. Let me know in the comments what other biblical characters you'd like to learn about next. Until then, stay curious.